I received a direct message this week from a follower who wanted to know when and how to start winter protecting their tree ferns that they had purchased over the last 12 and 18 months. Well, it is a little bit of a dancing act, very much like hardening off your seedlings in May and June. You really do need to judge the weather and to act in several different stages. The first thing that I'm going to do with this one is relatively small. It's only about 5 feet. It's in a large half barrel, which gives it a little bit of extra height, allowing me to stand under it here. One of the biggest things you want to do now is actually give it a little bit of feed. I don't know if many of you know, but tree ferns don't form traditionally huge root balls like you would expect them to. They do have a fibrous mass of tissue on the bottom of them, which through capillary action does raise moisture and, more importantly, nutrients up into the top of the plant. But most of the nutrition and most of the water are actually taken on through the very top of the plant. Most of the section underneath is actually dead. The top 18 inches of most tree ferns is the only bit that remains alive, and is the only piece you really need to worry about protecting from the frost. And this step-by-step guide is really to let you know which bits are important and what you need to be paying attention to. The first and most important rule is, if the foliage is green and it is not yet frosted off, whatever you do, do not remove it. If you're unlucky enough that you catch some wind and you lose a couple of fronds to wind, or sometimes the pigeons here land on mine and break them off, that's really frustrating. But what you should never do is remove any of the fronds if they're actually still green. That means they're actually still producing chloroform, they're still photosynthesizing and taking sugars and starches into the crown of the plant. They still have a use. They should always remain on. So at this stage, what we're going to do is we're going to start winterizing the top of the crown, and I've got some really good quality organic compost here. You don't want to be using anything spent, so if you have got spent compost about in the garden, this is not a job that you can use it for. This needs to be clean and sterile wherever possible. Good quality leaf mulch or organic compost is really good, something with quite a fibrous texture, and all you're going to do is take a couple of handfuls of that and very, very lightly drop that into the crown. That's the area right at the very top of the plant that is surrounded by those fronds coming out. Don't tap that down too much, and over the winter, as this gets wet, that's going to do one of two things. It's going to release nutrients into the top, and it will seep down into the part of the crown that's actually alive. It's also going to stop water crystals forming in the very, very top of the plant, which is the most dangerous thing here. These plants come from the tropics, places where they don't see frost, but they are frost hardy. You can keep these outside. I've had Fern Britain, my big tree fern on the other side of the patio. She's been outside in the beast of the east before, wrapped up properly, down to a temperature of about -17 for about 5 or 6 days, so it is possible to protect them from the frost. So now the compost is in the top, you're going to take some straw or hay, whatever you might have lying about. Now obviously we have chickens, so we have plenty of this kind of stuff about. I'm going to take a nice big loose handful of this hay. I'm just going to slightly ball it up, and for the time being I'm just going to place that in the very, very top of the crown between the fronds. Now this layer is really adding as a lovely woolly blanket for the plant. It's also going to help stop too much rain going directly into the plant, which of course in the future, as it cools down over the winter months, could actually freeze. So straw on the top, very, very loosely. Underneath that, a couple of handfuls of decent qualities compost or leaf mulch. I'm then going to wrap the very top 18 inches of the plant. This unfortunately is quite unsightly, but it has to be done. Old dust sheets or old curtains are really good for this, and all I've done is fold this up into an 18-inch strip, and I'm going to wrap that around the top of the plant. Now you shouldn't be choosing anything that's synthetic for this exercise. I know it sounds a little bit lavish, but the actual plant will actually need to continue to breathe over the winter. So make sure this is cotton, or at least sort of a very, very high cotton consistency. Otherwise, all you're going to do is stop the plant actually breathing, which is really bad. I'm in a second going to loosely tie this on with some string so it stays in place. I've got some hessian twine just in the bucket down there, which I'm going to tie it on for. And for now, that is the process complete. We're yet still to have a frost here on the south coast, and when we do, I'm then going to have to judge the next stage. If the frost is severe enough to blacken off the fronds, what I will do is I will remove all of the blackened fronds, leaving on around 4 to 5 inches of their original stem. That means there's still quite a large clump of growth in the middle. I will then take each frond, I will snap it into a U-shaped form, so something in the region in the middle of about a 12-inch section remains flat, and then the two sides come down, and I flop those over the very top of the tree fern, and again I then tie them around the top 18 inches. That will protect your tree fern from most of the inclement weather that we will experience here in the UK. If it does get very, very cold, and I mean temperatures down below -5, -6, I will nip out and I will probably then put a tea towel or an old hand towel over the very, very top. And you'll quite often find when that's really cold and we've had a little bit of snow, that little cap that I put on the top goes absolutely solid and it freezes, and you think, oh my goodness, has that frost permeated down into the crown? I've never had it done yet using this technique, so it's a little bit, as I say, like hardening off your plants at the very beginning of the year, a little bit of in, a little bit of out, and judging. This is the first stage, I say, to wrap the top 18 inches, put that all important feed into the very top of the crown, a couple of handfuls of decent quality compost, a couple of handfuls of either straw or hay, very loosely in the top. That will keep the worst of the weather off, and then as soon as these fronds are frosted off, cut them back, leave about 4 to 6 inches on the plant, fold these over the top and tie those on, and you've got a nice little winter hat. I say if things get very extreme, you can always give it a little woolly towel on the top. If you've got any